Every Friday, my husband Julian brings me fresh lilies and leaves a sweet, handwritten note in my lunchbox. To anyone looking into our beautiful Boston apartment, he is the perfect husband. And he is. But every time he smiles at me, I feel like I'm quietly suffocating. Because exactly 1 year ago, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I married a man I did not love. My name is Clara. At 28, I am trapped in a gilded cage of my own making. I married Julian out of sheer desperation, a reckless attempt to escape the ghost of my ex, Ethan, who had shattered my heart into pieces. I foolishly believed a wedding ring could cure my grief, hoping love would grow later. It never did. Instead, Julian's pure, unwavering devotion only deepens my hidden misery. Every sweet thing he does feels like a trial I am failing. But last night, out on our balcony, the fragile illusion shattered completely. Julian looked into my eyes and said something that changed everything, trapping me in a devastating lie I can no longer sustain. That night, we sat on the balcony under a canopy of stars. The summer air was warm, but I felt completely frozen inside. Julian reached out, took my trembling hand, and looked deeply into my eyes. "Clara, I know your heart isn't fully mine yet," he said softly, his voice thick with emotion. "But I believe it will be. I will wait for you. My love is strong enough to carry both of us." His words pierced through me like a knife. He was offering me pure, unconditional hope, while I had nothing but emptiness to give him in return. I forced a smile, murmuring a thank you that felt like ashes in my mouth. I was living a lie, desperately hoping that time would magically change how I felt. But love isn't a switch you can flip. Instead of growing closer to him, the suffocating guilt only grew heavier with each passing day. I thought I could keep pretending. I thought I could survive the guilt. But then, Julian announced his plans for our first wedding anniversary, a grand, romantic gesture that pushed me straight toward my breaking point. To celebrate our 1-year milestone, Julian spent hours preparing a beautiful surprise. He cooked my favorite dinner, lit elegant candles, played soft jazz, and even wore the emerald shirt I had once complimented. When I walked in, he smiled warmly and whispered, "This is all for you, Clara. You are my entire world." I forced a fragile smile, but every bite felt like swallowing glass. I was a fraud, sitting across from a man who gave me everything while I gave him nothing. After dinner, he led me to the neighborhood park, stopping right beneath the grand weeping willow where he had proposed a year ago. "I promised you forever right here, Clara," he said, pulling me close. And I meant it. Looking into his radiant, hopeful face, a sudden, terrifying urge washed over me. I wanted to scream the truth. The agonizing silence between us was becoming a physical weight, but the sheer fear of destroying him kept my lips sealed. Later that night, while Julian slept peacefully beside me, I slipped into the bathroom, locked the door, and dialed my closest friend in tears. I needed a lifeline, but the brutal, drastic advice she whispered through the phone changed the entire course of my marriage forever. I stared at the ceiling for hours, the crushing weight of my choices suffocating me. As soon as the sun rose, I couldn't hold it in anymore. I called my best friend, Chloe, and, for the first time, the dam broke. I confessed everything, the lingering ghost of Ethan, the loveless marriage, and the agonizing guilt of leading Julian on. Chloe listened quietly before offering a sobering piece of advice. "Clara, you are drowning. You need space. A temporary separation might help you figure out what your heart truly wants." I shook my head, tears streaming down my face. I didn't need time. The brutal truth was, I simply felt absolutely nothing for him. Later that afternoon, determined to end the charade, I sat next to Julian on the sofa. My hands were shaking, and my heart was pounding in my chest. "Julian, we need to talk," I began, my voice trembling. I braced myself to break his heart. But before the words could leave my mouth, Julian reached out, took my hands, and looked at me with eyes so full of sorrow it paralyzed me. He already knew what I was going to say, and the words that came out of his mouth next changed everything. "Please don't give up on us yet, Clara. Julian had pleaded that afternoon on the sofa, his eyes searching mine. I know things feel distant right now, but I still believe we can make this work. His unwavering faith only amplified my internal torture. Lacking the courage to shatter his world right then, I retreated back into my familiar, suffocating silence. But the ultimate breaking point arrived just 2 days later, on Sunday morning. Julian sat across from me at the breakfast table, took a deep breath, and asked a question that chilled me to the bone. Clara, do you think it's time we start a family? I truly believe a baby would bring us closer together. I froze, the air leaving my lungs. The terrifying thought of bringing an innocent child into a loveless marriage made reality hit me like a tidal wave. I'm not ready, Julian, I whispered, staring blankly at my hands. Though visibly crushed, he gently dropped the subject. I couldn't live the lie for another 24 hours. That night, while Julian slept peacefully, I packed a small suitcase in the pitch dark. Gripping my bags, I stood by the front door, looking back at my sleeping husband one last time. My hand reached for the doorknob, ready to escape. But as the lock clicked open, the hallway light snapped on behind me, and a shadow stretched across the floor. I froze as the hallway light snapped on, casting a long shadow across the front door. I spun around, my heart hammering against my ribs, expecting to see Julian standing there, catching me red-handed. But it was just the automated timer of our apartment building clicking on. Julian was still in bed, sleeping peacefully, completely unaware of my betrayal. Looking at him, the sheer weight of my guilt paralyzed me. I couldn't just disappear like a thief in the night. Dropping my suitcase, I collapsed onto the floor and wept silently until dawn. The next evening, I knew I couldn't live the lie for another second. I made a pot of tea and asked Julian to sit with me. My hands shook violently as I looked across the table. Julian, you are an incredible man, I said, my voice cracking. But I cannot do this anymore. I don't love you. I married you because my heart was broken and I was running from my past. I hoped love would grow, but it never did. The room fell into a suffocating silence. Julian didn't shout. He didn't storm out. Instead, he just sat there, a single tear rolling down his cheek, looking at me with a profound, quiet sadness. Then, he reached into his pocket, pulled out a small velvet box, and slid it across the table toward me. What was inside forced me to face the ultimate truth of what I had done. Julian didn't look at me with anger. Instead, he gently pushed the small velvet box closer to me. With trembling fingers, I opened it. Inside wasn't a new piece of jewelry. It was the key to a small studio apartment downtown, alongside a signed copy of our divorce papers. I already knew, Clara, Julian whispered softly, his voice trembling. I saw the distance in your eyes months ago. I just didn't want to believe it. But I love you enough to let you go. I can't be the only one fighting for a marriage that only exists in my dreams. His grace crushed me more than anger ever could. The following morning, Julian silently helped me carry my final boxes down to the street. He offered one last, bittersweet smile. Take care of yourself, Clara, he said quietly. As the taxi pulled away, I didn't look back in the rearview mirror. For the first time in a whole year, the crushing weight on my chest completely lifted. I had broken a good man's heart, and I would have to live with that guilt forever. But as I looked out at the Boston skyline, I realized I was finally breathing real air. Months passed quietly in my new studio apartment near the Botanical Boutique. I painted the walls a soft, warm cream, filled the windowsills with thriving green plants, and even enrolled in a local pottery class, finding a strange solace in shaping clay with my own hands. I was slowly learning how to be whole on my own. Then, on a quiet Tuesday evening, my phone lit up with a text message. It was from Julian. Hi, Clara. Just wanted to let you know I'm doing well. I started an outdoor hiking club to keep busy. I genuinely wish you peace and happiness. Tears of pure relief filled my eyes as I typed a warm reply, wishing him the absolute best. We haven't spoken since, but closing that chapter with kindness healed something deep inside my soul. I had finally learned that you should never silence your heart or marry for the wrong reasons. It takes immense bravery to admit a mistake, but standing in my own truth finally saved my life. If Clara's journey touched your heart, please hit the like button, leave a comment below sharing your thoughts, and subscribe to True Life Dramas for more emotional, real-life stories. Thank you for watching.